welcome to a little tutorial on Chaturanga. I received some information from a teacher that was really practice changing, and ever since then I've been really passionate about helping people find their proper alignment. That way we can practice sustainably for a long time, because vinyasa in particular is very rough on the shoulders. That repetitive movement, especially when we don't know how to do it correctly, can damage the ligaments of the shoulder. The shoulder is a very kind of precarious joint. It's not like the hip where it's a deep ball and socket where it's kind of like bonks into bone, but the shoulder is very shallow, so it really just is held there by muscles and ligaments and tendons. So we want to keep those safe by using the right ones instead of letting everything collapse into the front of our shoulder, which is what typically happens, and we scrunch up into our neck. We want to learn to use this stuff down here, behind the shoulder blade, under the shoulder blade. It helps to keep our shoulder in the proper position, because a lot of the time our shoulder looks like this because of bad posture or devices or things, so it's really easy to just drop into that place. A lot of it depends on our neck as well. So even as you sit here, I want you to notice what happens to your spine when you drop your chin towards your chest. Your whole upper spine collapses like this. Now, for opposition, I want you to look up and notice what your upper spine does. It arches. We want to find the sweet spot in between. It would be just like our mountain pose, or just like a normal position where our head isn't jutting forward of our shoulders, but we're bringing our head back in line. So ideally, the ears are in line with the shoulders. And again, some of that might be some strengthening that you just need to focus on until you can get into proper posture, but it'll happen. Just keep practicing. Resistance bands are also very, very helpful in keeping your shoulders healthy. So first, let me show you what we commonly see, some mistakes in Chaturanga, and then you can kind of try it out in your body. So first off, people will put their hands on the floor and their hands will be together like this, creating this little dome shape, or maybe their hands will be turned, let's see, turned inward like that. It's kind of hard to see. I need someone else to film this. But their hands you'll see their hands turn in and the elbows go out. We don't want that. So commonly we think about index finger pointing straight forward, and that's going to help us keep our elbows in. Now, if you are, most of the times men have bulkier shoulders, and that's gonna have them real tight up in here. So I'll tell them to turn their hands out even a little bit more so they can access that external rotation of their arms. But in generally, we don't wanna turn the hands out a lot. We wanna find, again, the middle path between like a little and a lot and too much, playing with those edges. Another thing that I see with the elbows, or let me stay with the hands for a moment. Another thing with the hands is that you'll see people do their Chaturanga and their fingers will fly up off the floor. So especially when we come to plank, a lot of people will fly back to downward dog. The fingers are flying off the mat, and then we come forward and the hands will do all kinds of crazy stuff as we're coming down. And then even here when we go into our vinyasa, the hands are just run the gamut of what you see. And we want to keep the hands in the same position the whole time. We're using those fingertips. So we're not just dumping into our wrist, but we're spreading the weight through the hand. So when you use your hand, you want to think about this edge and this edge. When we say the inner edges of your hands, that is what we want grounded to the floor. That prevents that like doming shape like that. We want to flatten it and spread it out. And now again, you can see here my fingers are kind of like hyperextending. My fingers are coming up. I would be pressing those into the floor, so I'm creating this suction effect through the hand, not just like this heaviness, but a suction and a pulling. All right, so I think that's it on the hands. Another thing that I commonly see is with the elbows, because there's a cue of keep your elbows tucked in. I even heard teachers say like hug your elbows into your rib cage, and that's kind of like an over exaggeration of it. So again, we're looking for the middle path where our elbows are not poking out to the sides, but tucked into our body. Just nice and easy, not like squeezing in. This is what we see, especially people who might not have the upper body strength. They kind of like use their elbows to support them. You can see what happens up in my neck is I get all scrunchy up in here, and the shoulder gets tight, and then there's all this compensation happening in the front of the shoulder instead of using this stuff to pull the shoulder back so we're not so heavy in the shoulder. And then the head. So with the head, like I said, we want to come into Chaturanga and make sure that we're not looking underneath us, because then we start to lose the stability of the shoulder. We're also not looking forward, because that kinks up the back of the neck. We want to think about Tadasana, just a normal position with our ears in line with our shoulders. Now, a lot of the time in Chaturanga, you can see I'm engaging my belly a little bit, my booty's sticking out a bit. Now I am refilming these videos because back in the day, I used to over-tuck my pelvis. I used to overcompensate. And so we've got to find the middle path where we allow that normal lumbar curve that should be there, just like the normal curve of the cervical spine. We're not trying to flatten that all out. So we want a slight little tuck and engagement of the pelvis, but not an over-tuck. And then we want a tiny little arch of the lumbar spine, but we also don't want to see this. Is what is really common, is people who do not have the upper body strength, they're really weak here. And so it's all in their shoulders, it's all in their hips. Oh gosh, and that just feels terrible. Everything is compensating, so we're not using the right muscles. So let's talk about the shoulder blades. Another common thing that happens with the shoulder blades in Chaturanga, and also in plank, is that they, let me see, light is better this way. So you can see like the shoulder blade will wing off my body. It's like literally winging off. Now that's the only way I can get mine to wing off of my body. It won't really do it like naturally, kind of have to play with it. But yeah, sometimes people's shoulders will not be stable in that way. That's the subscapularis. So we have to know how to hug that shoulder onto our back. So some of the most helpful cues for me are protracting the shoulder. I want you to try this. Extend your arm away from your body. Retract the shoulder. Protract the shoulder. Retract the shoulder. Protract. Retract. So retracting is not stable. We have to protract. Now I want you to pull the shoulder down the back, and you're going to feel this muscle right here on the side of your rib cage fire up. That's your serratus anterior. Good. And then hugging the shoulder onto the back. So when we bend our elbows, we want that shoulder to stay glued onto the back and not like wing off. I can't even do it. But yeah, some people's shoulders are very, very unstable, and that is where the band lat pull downs will help with that. Let's get to it. Make sure that your wrists are a little bit warmed up. You might pause the video and just do a little bit of movement before your first Chaturanga. Definitely do this first one with your knees down. So we'll start in a modified plank. First thing to check is your hands. Fingers spread wide, index fingers forward. You're using your fingertips. You're using the inner edges of your hands. Next thing to check is your shoulders. Push the ground away, slide the shoulders down the back and wrap the triceps in. Check your neck. Your neck is in line with the rest of your spine. Check your belly and your hips. Your hips are not sagging, but they're about in line with your shoulders. So notice I'm not in a tabletop with my knees underneath my hips. I've got my knees back about 4 or 5 inches. Inhale, pull the heart forward, and exhale, slowly come halfway down. Now check on your hips, your shoulders, your neck, your elbows. Roll the shoulders back and down, and push back up as you inhale. Exhale, downward facing, or excuse me, child's pose, or downward dog if you like. So another common thing that we'll see is that people don't get their hands in the right position. Sometimes their hands are too close to their shoulders. So you'll see them come down like this. The hands are like underneath the shoulders and the wrists are not underneath the elbows. So we're a little bit too scrunched up there. We want the hands to land about here. So from plank, modified or regular, inhale, shift forward the tips of the toes. That helps get us in position. And then exhale, come all the way down and see where your hands landed. If they are forward underneath your shoulders or if they're a little bit backward near your chest, which is where they should be. Elbows over the shoulders. Tuck the elbows in. Inhale to your cobra. Exhale, take it back to child's pose or down the dog. Let's try that again. Inhale, shift forward. Exhale, plank. Now, rolling over the toes can be tricky. Inhale, shift forward all the way to the tip of the toenail. That means you have less that you need to roll over. Exhale, come halfway down. Inhale, roll over the toes, shoulders back and down. Exhale, downward facing dog, rolling over the toes. A lot of people want to walk their feet forward, but we don't. Try not to do that. One more deep breath. And release down. So give that a couple more tries. If you have a mirror nearby, it's helpful to be able to see what's happening in your shoulder. Again, we want to avoid this and think about utilizing all this stuff to keep the shoulder back. I like to think about, imagine I'm wearing a neck brace when I do Chaturanga. That way everything stays in nice alignment. Let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed this video. Happy practicing, y'all. Thanks for moving with me.